You know, when most people learn English, they focus on memorizing words. They think, if I just know more vocabulary, I'll become fluent. And sure, knowing words is important. But here's the thing, memorizing words alone won't make your English smooth, natural, or confident. You can know thousands of words, but if your brain hasn't learned to think in English, speaking still feels slow, awkward, and stressful. Let me tell you a story. I had a student, let's call her Aisha. She knew a huge number of words. She could recite lists, definitions, synonyms, you name it. But when she tried to speak, she paused every few seconds, translating from her native language in her head. She was frustrated because she thought she had all the tools, but something was missing. The missing piece. Her brain hadn't learned to operate in English. She was relying on memorized vocabulary instead of thinking in English. And that's what I want to focus on today, creating an English brain, not just a vocabulary bank. An English brain is a brain that processes ideas, feelings, and sentences directly in English. It doesn't need to translate. It doesn't hesitate. It reacts, imagines, and responds naturally. And the beautiful part is, anyone can train their brain this way. It's just a matter of practice and mindset. Let's break it down. When you memorize words, your brain stores them like items in a box. You know where they are, but accessing them in real-time conversation is slow. Thinking in English is different. It's like your brain has built a direct highway for ideas, so when you want to speak, the words flow naturally. No detours. No translations. This is what fluency really is. I remember working with a student named Karim. Karim loved studying vocabulary. He had thousands of words in his notebook. But whenever he spoke, he would translate every sentence from his language to English. It was exhausting. So we started small exercises to create his English brain. We did mini imagining sessions. He would look at a simple picture and describe it entirely in English. At first it was hard. He hesitated. But little by little, his brain started thinking in English directly. Words came naturally. Sentences flowed. And after a few months, Karim was speaking more confidently than ever before. So how do you start creating an English brain? First, you need to immerse your mind in English patterns, not just words. For example, instead of memorizing apple, banana, orange, notice how sentences are built. I eat an apple every morning. She likes bananas. Do you want some oranges? See how the words interact. See the structure. Your brain starts recognizing patterns instead of isolated words. That's how natural speaking develops. Let's talk about another story. There was a woman named Lena. She had learned a lot of vocabulary, but she couldn't speak freely. We started a daily thinking in English exercise. Every time she saw an object, a cup, a chair, a tree, she described it silently in English, adding details, feelings, and small stories. At first, it felt strange. Her brain resisted. But after weeks, it became automatic. She no longer needed to translate. English became a way of thinking for her. She literally built an English brain. Here's a simple exercise you can try right now. Look around the room. Pick 3 objects. Describe them in English, not just naming them, but talking about them. For example, instead of saying book, say, this book is on my desk. I like reading it in the morning because it helps me relax. Feel the sentences flow. Don't worry about mistakes. Your goal is to get your brain used to thinking in English, not just memorizing words. Another key step is using English in real situations, even small ones. Order your coffee in English. Describe your walk to work in English. Talk to yourself in English while cooking or cleaning. These real-life mini conversations train your brain to use English naturally. They create mental shortcuts. You start to see the world in English. Your thoughts begin to flow in English. Vocabulary isn't just stored, it's alive. And here's an interesting point. Creating an English brain isn't just about speaking. It also improves listening, reading, and writing. When your brain thinks in English, you start predicting language naturally. You anticipate words in conversation. You understand movies faster. You read faster because your brain doesn't pause to translate every sentence. Everything becomes smoother because your mind is already tuned to English. I want to share a story about a student named Omar. He was a huge movie fan but struggled to understand English movies without subtitles. We focused on thinking in English while watching small clips. Instead of pausing to translate, he described actions and dialogue silently in English. At first, it was challenging, but his brain adjusted. Soon, he could follow entire scenes without translating. He wasn't memorizing words, he was living in English. His listening and speaking improved at the same time. Now, here's a practical method I call mental English immersion. Every day, spend 10 to 15 minutes silently narrating your thoughts in English. Describe what you see, what you feel, what you plan to do. The key is consistency. Your brain learns best with repeated exposure and active use. Over time, thinking in English becomes second nature. You're no longer memorizing vocabulary. You're processing the world in English. Another powerful exercise is storytelling in English. Take a simple event from your day. Retell it in English with as much detail as possible. For example, today I walked to the park. The sun was shining, and I could hear birds singing. I saw a little dog chasing a ball, and it made me laugh. When you tell stories, you practice sentence structure, grammar, and vocabulary in context. You create mental patterns, and your English brain grows stronger every day. And don't underestimate the power of thinking creatively in English. Imagine describing things that aren't in front of you. For example, describe your dream vacation, or invent a short story about your favorite character. The more you push your brain to generate English ideas, the faster your fluency develops. Vocabulary becomes natural because it's being used actively, not just memorized passively. Let me share another example. A student named Farah loved writing lists of words, but she couldn't speak smoothly. We shifted her focus to creating small stories in English every day, 2 or 3 sentences at first, then longer. She described daily events, imagined scenarios, even created short dialogues. Within months, her brain started thinking in English automatically. Speaking became effortless because her vocabulary was embedded in context, not just stored in a notebook. Here's an exercise to try for thinking creatively. Pick a random object, a cup, a pen, or a tree. Now make a short story about it entirely in English. Give it a name, a personality, a little adventure. Don't worry about mistakes. The goal is to train your mind to generate English, not just store it. Over time, this builds your English brain and fluency naturally. Another tip is shadowing, listening to native speakers and repeating immediately. Don't just mimic words, try to imitate the thought flow, rhythm, and structure. Your brain starts recognizing patterns, predicting sentences, and thinking in English in real time. Vocabulary is no longer isolated. It lives in your mind naturally, ready to flow in conversation. And let's talk about mindset. Creating an English brain requires patience and curiosity. You will make mistakes. You will hesitate. But each attempt is training your mind. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Over time, the brain rewires itself. The English brain you're building doesn't need to translate, it thinks, reacts, and imagines in English. That's the real power of fluency. Finally, remember this: vocabulary alone is like having bricks without a blueprint. You can have all the bricks, but without the structure, you can't build a house. Creating an English brain is building the blueprint, the mental structure, the network that allows vocabulary to flow naturally into sentences, thoughts, and conversations. That is what true fluency is. Now, I want you to try a mental narration exercise with me. Take a simple object near you, a cup, a pen, or even your phone, and describe everything about it in English. Don't just name it. Talk about what it looks like, how it feels, how you use it, even your thoughts about it. For example, this pen is blue. I use it to write notes in the morning. I like how smooth it feels when I write. I think I will buy another one soon because this one is almost finished. Notice how naturally the words start coming when you let your mind operate in English, not just pulling words from memory. Let me share a story that illustrates this. A student named Imran had been memorizing lists of vocabulary for months, but he struggled to speak. I suggested he spend 10 minutes each day narrating objects, events, or his thoughts in English. At first, it felt awkward. He hesitated and paused constantly. But after a few weeks, something amazing happened. He started forming sentences automatically, without translating. His vocabulary wasn't just memorized, it was alive in his mind, ready to be used. That's the power of building an English brain. Another exercise is mental conversation. Pretend you are having a conversation in English, even if no one is there. Ask questions and answer them yourself. For instance, what do I want to eat today? Maybe a sandwich. Should I make one or order? If I make one, I need bread and cheese. Oh, I have everything at home, so I'll make it. This trains your brain to think in English and form sentences quickly, like a conversation is happening naturally. I want to emphasize why this works. When you engage in these exercises, you're training your working memory in English. Your brain starts linking ideas to words in real time, rather than pausing to translate from your native language. The more you do this, the faster your mind processes English, and the easier speaking, listening, and even writing become. Let's talk about storytelling, because stories are incredibly powerful for building an English brain. Every day, take one small event: your morning walk, a meal you had, a funny incident, and tell it in English. Add details, emotions, and reactions. For example, I walked to the park today. The sun was shining, and a little boy was flying a kite. It made me smile because it reminded me of my childhood. I stopped for a coffee and enjoyed the quiet moment. By practicing stories daily, your brain starts to think in English naturally, and vocabulary becomes embedded in context rather than floating as isolated words. And here's a tip: mix in imagination with reality. For example, After telling a real story, add a small twist, and suddenly the kite lifted me into the sky. I could see the city from above. This makes your mind generate English actively and creatively, strengthening your English brain even more. Another key point, reading alone isn't enough if you're just memorizing words. Instead, focus on understanding and processing sentences and ideas in English. When you read, don't translate, think in English. Ask yourself questions like, what does this sentence mean? How would I explain it in my own words in English? This trains your brain to process English directly. Instead of pausing to search for vocabulary translations, let me share another student example. A woman named Sarah loved reading English books, but she struggled to speak. I told her to read a short paragraph and then summarize it in English aloud, without using her native language. She hesitated at first, but after a few weeks of daily practice, she started speaking smoothly, forming sentences naturally. Her vocabulary was now connected to ideas and stories, not just lists. She had started building an English brain. Here's a pattern noticing exercise you can do today. Take a few sentences from a book, podcast, or video. Pay attention not just to the words, but to how sentences are structured. Notice the order of words, the connectors like because, although, but, and the small phrases that repeat often. Then, try using the same patterns to create new sentences in English. This is how your brain starts recognizing structure naturally, and it becomes easier to speak in English fluently. And here's a crucial mindset shift. Stop obsessing over vocabulary alone. Think instead about language in action, ideas, sentences, patterns, thoughts. Words matter, yes, but fluency comes from how your brain organizes and uses those words. When you start thinking in English, vocabulary becomes accessible automatically. You don't need to memorize every single word. It's already wired into your brain in context. Now, let's do a dialogue shadowing exercise. Pick a short conversation from a movie, TV show, or podcast. Listen carefully, then repeat immediately after each speaker, matching tone, pace, and rhythm. Don't worry about understanding every word. Focus on the flow. This trains your brain to process English directly, improving fluency and natural thinking in English. Over time, your mind starts predicting sentences and patterns, making speaking effortless. Finally, I want to highlight consistency. Building an English brain is like training a muscle. Small, daily exercises, narrating thoughts, storytelling, shadowing, pattern noticing compound over time. Your mind begins to operate in English without effort. Vocabulary is no longer a collection of words. To memorize it becomes alive, ready to flow in speech, writing, and thought. Now, I want to guide you through a live Thinking in English session. Take a deep breath and look around your environment. Pick one object, a cup, a pen, a chair, anything, and describe it fully in English. Don't just name it. Talk about its shape, color, texture, and how you interact with it. For example, this chair is wooden. It has a soft cushion. I usually sit here in the morning to drink my tea. It's comfortable, and I like the way it faces the window. Notice how your mind reacts. At first, you might pause, search for words, or translate in your head. That's normal. Every pause is a chance to train your brain. Over time, describing objects in English becomes automatic. Your mind begins to think in English, not just recall vocabulary. This is the foundation of an English brain. Let me share a story about a student named Rafi. He spent years memorizing words but struggled to speak. We started a daily habit of object narration. At first, he hesitated, repeating words slowly. But after a few weeks, sentences started flowing naturally. Words were no longer isolated, they connected into ideas and thoughts. His vocabulary became alive, and speaking in English felt effortless. Next, let's do a mental conversation exercise. Imagine you are having a dialogue with a friend in English. Ask questions and answer them yourself. For instance, what should I cook for lunch? Maybe pasta. Do I have tomatoes? Yes. Should I add cheese? Oh, yes. I love cheese on pasta. Speak aloud if possible. The key is to simulate real conversation. Your brain learns to form sentences in English automatically, building fluency without translation. Here's another story to illustrate this. A student named Lena had strong vocabulary but froze during conversations. We practiced mental dialogue daily. Over time, her hesitation disappeared. Her brain had learned to process English in real time. Vocabulary wasn't memorized, it was ready to use. This is the power of thinking in English instead of relying on translation. Now, let's talk about storytelling in English. Pick a simple event from your day, a walk, a meal, or a funny incident and describe it in English. Add details, feelings, and reactions. For example, today I walked to the park. The sun was shining. I saw a little dog chasing a ball, and it made me laugh. I sat on a bench and enjoyed the quiet moment. When you tell stories, your brain learns sentence patterns, connects vocabulary with context, and builds natural fluency. To take it further, add a creative twist to your stories. Imagine a small fictional element. The dog suddenly started talking and asked me for a treat. Creative storytelling trains your brain to generate English independently. Vocabulary becomes functional and flexible, not just a memorized list. Another exercise is shadowing dialogues. Listen to a short conversation in English from a movie, podcast, or video. Repeat each line immediately, matching rhythm, tone, and intonation. Don't worry about every word, focus on flow and pattern. Shadowing builds your brain's ability to think in English in real time. Your vocabulary starts working naturally, forming sentences effortlessly. Let's also try a reflection exercise. Think about a time you learned something new, maybe riding a bike or cooking a recipe. How did your mind adapt? Now, imagine applying that mindset to learning English. Each small attempt, each mistake, and each practice session rewires your brain. Fluency is not magic, it's a result of consistent mental training and active thinking in English. Here's a pattern noticing exercise you can try daily. Take 3 sentences from a book or a video. Notice how the words are connected. Look at the order, connectors, and repeated phrases. Then, make your own sentences using the same patterns. This helps your brain recognize natural structures, allowing vocabulary to flow effortlessly in conversation. And don't forget daily mental narration. Spend 10-15 minutes every day silently describing your thoughts, surroundings, or plans in English. Over time, your brain stops relying on translation. You start thinking, reacting, and imagining directly in English. Vocabulary is now functional, your sentences are natural, and fluency grows organically. Let me share one final story. A student named Omar struggled with listening and speaking simultaneously. We combined mental narration, shadowing, storytelling and pattern noticing. Within months, his brain started processing English directly. He could watch movies, understand conversations, and speak confidently all without translating. He hadn't just memorized words. He had built an English brain. Now, I want you to reflect for a moment. How often do you practice English, thinking versus memorizing words? Could a small change in daily habits, mental narration, storytelling, shadowing transform your fluency? The answer is yes. The English brain isn't built overnight, but it grows steadily with consistent active practice. And here's a mindset reminder: celebrate progress, not perfection. Every sentence you form, every story you tell, every conversation you imagine in English is a step toward fluency. Your brain is learning to process English naturally, connecting words to ideas, thoughts, and actions. Vocabulary alone cannot do this. It's the thinking in English that changes everything. Now, let's do an extended observation and narration exercise together. Take a few minutes and look around your environment. Pick 5 objects, any 5. For each object, don't just name it. Describe it in full English sentences. Include its appearance, purpose, how you interact with it, and even your thoughts or feelings about it. For example, this cup is white and ceramic. I usually drink tea from it in the morning. I like how it feels warm in my hands. Yesterday I accidentally dropped it, and it made a small crack. I think I will use it carefully from now on. As you do this, notice how your brain begins to link words with ideas. Vocabulary is no longer separate, it's integrated into thought. Even if you pause or search for words, that pause is practice. Over time, your sentences flow naturally because your brain has learned to think in English first, not translate from your native language. Let me tell you about a student named Hassan. He had studied English for years, but froze whenever he spoke. We implemented a daily narration practice for 15 minutes, describing objects, thoughts, and events. Initially, he struggled, but after a few weeks, he was forming complete sentences automatically, without translation. Vocabulary became alive in context, flowing naturally in conversation. His English brain was developing, and fluency was beginning to emerge. Next, let's do a mental conversation simulation. Imagine you are speaking to a friend or colleague in English. Ask yourself questions and respond out loud. For example, what should I cook for dinner tonight? Maybe pasta? Do I have tomatoes? Yes. Should I add cheese? Yes. That sounds perfect. I think I will also make a salad. I enjoy healthy meals. Try to think of several questions and answers like this. Your brain is learning to generate English thoughts, sentences, and responses automatically. Vocabulary is no longer memorized, it's functioning as part of real-time thinking. Now, let's move to storytelling practice. Recall a recent small event, perhaps something that happened today. Describe it in English, adding details, emotions, and reactions. For example, this morning, I walked to the park. The sun was shining, and the birds were singing. I saw a little girl flying a kite, and it made me smile. I sat on a bench and enjoyed a cup of coffee while watching the world go by. After narrating, add a creative twist to the story. Maybe imagine a funny or unexpected element. For instance, suddenly, the kite lifted into the sky so high it seemed like it could touch the clouds. I imagined flying alongside it, and it made me laugh. This kind of creative storytelling trains your brain to generate English spontaneously. Words and sentences are now connected to ideas and imagination, not just memorized vocabulary lists. Next, let's do a shadowing exercise. Find a short dialogue from a movie, podcast, or YouTube video. Listen to one line, then repeat it aloud immediately, matching the speaker's rhythm, tone, and intonation. Do this line by line. At first, focus on accuracy. Then, focus on feeling the flow of English sentences. This trains your brain to process language in real time. Your mind begins predicting patterns and anticipating phrases. Vocabulary is now functional. It flows naturally into sentences, and your English brain grows stronger. Let's also incorporate pattern noticing. Take 3 sentences from a video, book, or conversation. Examine how words connect. Notice sentence structures, common connectors like because, although, or however, and repeated phrases. Then, create your own sentences using the same patterns. For example, original. I went to the park because the weather was nice. Your sentence. I went to the market because I needed fresh vegetables. This trains your brain to recognize English patterns naturally, making fluency faster and more automatic. Now, let's do a reflection exercise. Think about a time you learned a new skill, maybe riding a bike, cooking a recipe, or playing a song. How did your mind adapt? How did practice, repetition, and thinking in real time help you improve? Now, imagine applying the same principles to English. Every sentence you form, every story you tell, every object you describe trains your brain. Vocabulary is no longer isolated, it becomes embedded in your thinking process. Fluency emerges naturally. And here's an important mindset reminder: celebrate small victories. Even if you only speak for 2 minutes without translating or form one complete sentence naturally, that is progress. Your brain is rewiring itself to operate in English. Every small step compounds into real fluency. Finally, let's combine all these exercises into a daily routine that strengthens your English brain. Mental narration. At 10-15 minutes, describe your surroundings, objects, or thoughts in English. Storytelling. 5-10 minutes. Retell recent events, adding details, emotions, and creative twists. Mental conversation. 5 minutes. Ask and answer questions in English with yourself. Shadowing. 5-10 minutes. Repeat lines from videos or audio, matching rhythm and tone. Pattern noticing. 5 minutes. Analyze sentences. Create your own and connect vocabulary to context. Reflection journaling of 5 minutes. Note your progress, small wins, and areas to experiment with. Follow this routine consistently, and over time, your brain will think in English automatically. Vocabulary is no longer just memorized, it flows naturally. Your sentences, ideas, and conversations become effortless. This is the essence of building an English brain, not just collecting words. Now, let's do a 5-minute live thinking session together. I want you to pick a single object in your room. For the next 5 minutes, describe everything about it in English. Don't just name it, talk about its appearance, texture, purpose, and even your thoughts or memories related to it. For example, this notebook is blue and has a soft cover. I use it every morning to write my ideas. I like how smooth the pages feel when I write. Last week, I accidentally spilled some water on it, but luckily it didn't ruin any notes. I think I will keep it on my desk from now on because it inspires me. Keep speaking continuously. If you run out of words, Describe small details, imagine a story, or even give it personality. For instance, if this notebook could talk, it would probably say, "Please write more ideas." The point here is to train your brain to think in English, not just recall vocabulary. Each pause, each sentence you form strengthens your English brain. Vocabulary becomes connected to ideas, thoughts, and imagination. Let me share a story. A student named Farhan practiced object narration daily for 10 minutes. Initially, he paused frequently, searching for words. But after a few weeks, sentences started flowing naturally. He could describe scenes, narrate experiences, and even imagine creative stories in English. Vocabulary wasn't memorized, it was alive, ready for immediate use. Next, we'll do a mental dialogue exercise. Imagine you are talking to a friend in English. Ask questions and answer them aloud. For example, what should I have for breakfast? Maybe pancakes. Do I have syrup? Yes. Should I make coffee too? Yes. I love coffee in the morning. Oh, I forgot to buy milk, so I'll use almond milk instead. Try this with multiple questions, building a mini conversation. Your brain begins forming English sentences without translating. Words flow naturally, and fluency emerges from practice. Now let's add storytelling with imagination. Take a recent event from your day and tell it in English. Add emotions, details, and a small creative twist. For example, today I walked to the park. The sun was shining and birds were singing. I saw a little dog chasing a ball, and it made me smile. Suddenly, the dog jumped so high, it almost touched the clouds. I laughed and imagined flying alongside it. Creative storytelling trains your brain to generate English spontaneously. Vocabulary and grammar are no longer isolated, they are applied naturally in context. Let's move on to shadowing practice. Find a short dialogue from a video, podcast, or movie. Listen to one line and repeat it aloud immediately, matching the speaker's rhythm, tone, and emotion. Focus on flow, not perfection. Do this line by line. Shadowing trains your brain to process English in real time, strengthens sentence patterns, and improves listening and speaking simultaneously. Here's a pattern noticing exercise you can try next. Take 3 sentences from a podcast, book, or video. Notice connectors like because, although, however, and repeated phrases. Then, make your own sentences using the same patterns. For example, original. I went to the store because I needed some vegetables. Your sentence. I went to the market because I wanted to buy some fruits. This helps your brain recognize natural structures and connect vocabulary to ideas, allowing sentences to flow effortlessly. Now, we'll do reflection and journaling. Take a few minutes to reflect. What small wins did you achieve today in English? Maybe you spoke for 5 minutes without translating, or narrated a story creatively. Write down 3 victories and 1 thing to experiment with tomorrow. Celebrating small successes reinforces your mindset and builds fluency naturally. Let's extend the practice with timed exercises, 2 minutes, object narration. Pick an object and describe everything about it in English. 3 minutes mental dialogue. Ask yourself questions and answer in English. 5 minutes storytelling. Narrate a recent event or create a short imaginative story. 5 minutes shadowing. Repeat lines from a podcast or video. Focus on rhythm and flow. 3 minutes pattern practice. Analyze sentences and create new ones using the same structures. This routine keeps your brain engaged in English for nearly 20 minutes straight. Imagine doing this consistently every day. The progress is enormous. Your brain starts thinking directly in English. Vocabulary is active, sentence patterns are automatic, and fluency becomes effortless. Finally, here's a mindset reminder. Consistency beats intensity. Small, daily exercises compound into massive results over time. Your English brain develops gradually, connecting words to ideas, sentences, and thoughts. Vocabulary is no longer memorized, it's functional. Fluency isn't a distant dream. It's the natural outcome of thinking in English every day. Now, let's do a 10-minute immersive English thinking exercise. I want you to pick a location, a park, your living room, a cafe, or even your workplace, and mentally walk through it in English. Describe everything you see, hear, and feel. For example, I walk into the cafe. The smell of coffee is strong and inviting. The barista is smiling as he prepares drinks. A couple sits by the window, chatting and laughing. I notice a small plant on the table, and its leaves are bright green. I sit down and take a sip of my coffee. It's warm and smooth, and I enjoy the quiet moment. Keep going for 10 minutes. Add details, imagine small stories about the people around you, or even think about what might happen next. The goal is to think entirely in English. Don't translate from your native language. Your brain is building direct pathways to process English naturally. Vocabulary is no longer separate. It's connected to ideas, emotions, and situations. Let me share a story about a student named Amir. He had memorized hundreds of words, but struggled to form sentences spontaneously. We started a daily 10-minute immersive thinking exercise. At first, he paused often, searching for words. But gradually, he began describing scenes fluidly. His sentences grew longer, his vocabulary became active, and he even started imagining creative scenarios in English. After a few months, Amir's fluency had improved dramatically. He no longer needed to translate in his mind. He had built an English brain. Next, let's do a mental dialogue and role-play exercise. Imagine you are speaking to a friend, a teacher, or a colleague. Pick a topic like planning a trip, discussing a movie, or choosing a meal. Ask questions and answer in full sentences. For example, what should we do this weekend? Maybe we can go hiking. Do we have enough time? Yes, I think Saturday morning is perfect. Should we invite friends? That's a good idea. I'll text them later. Continue this dialogue for 5 minutes. Then, switch roles, pretend your friend responds, and continue the conversation. This helps your brain process English sentences dynamically. Vocabulary becomes alive in context, and fluency grows naturally. Now, let's introduce storytelling with layers of detail and imagination. Take a small event from your day and narrate it in English for 5 minutes. Include as much detail as possible, feelings, observations, and imagined dialogue. Then add a creative twist or alternative ending. For example, today I walked to the park. The sun was shining and birds were singing. I saw a child flying a kite. Suddenly, the kite lifted him up, and he floated gently into the sky. I imagined myself flying alongside him, laughing as we floated above the trees. Then I woke up from the daydream and continued my walk, smiling. Creative storytelling trains your mind to generate English independently. Vocabulary is no longer static. It flows naturally in real-life contexts. Your brain is now processing English ideas, sentences and stories automatically. Let's also incorporate a shadowing and mimicry exercise. Pick a short dialogue from a movie, YouTube video, or podcast. Listen carefully, then repeat each line immediately, copying tone, rhythm, and emotion. At first, focus on accuracy. Then, focus on thinking with the sentences, not just repeating words. Shadowing strengthens listening, speaking, and thinking in English simultaneously. Your English brain is learning to anticipate patterns and respond in real time. Here's a pattern noticing and sentence creation exercise. Choose 3 sentences from any English source. Analyze the structure, connectors, and repeated phrases. Create new sentences using the same patterns. For example, original. I went to the store because I needed vegetables. New. I stayed home because it was raining outside. Original. She likes reading books in the morning. New. Hay enjoys jogging in the park every evening. Your brain starts seeing patterns automatically. Vocabulary is embedded in context, and fluency emerges naturally. Now, take a reflection break. Think about your English practice today. Which exercises did you enjoy? Which felt challenging? What small progress did you notice, even if it was just forming a sentence without translating? Reflecting on progress reinforces your mindset and builds confidence. Finally, let's combine everything into a powerful daily routine to strengthen your English brains. Spend 15 minutes. Immersive thinking. Describe a scene, location, or environment in English. 5-10 minutes. Mental dialogue. Role-play conversations with yourself or an imaginary friend. 5 minutes. Storytelling. Narrate an event or create a short imaginative story. 5 minutes. Shadowing. Repeat lines from a video or podcast, focusing on flow and rhythm. 5 minutes. Pattern practice. Analyze sentences and create your own using the same structures. 3 to 5 minutes. Reflection. Note small wins and areas to experiment with tomorrow. Practicing this daily trains your mind to think in English directly, connecting vocabulary, sentence patterns, and ideas naturally. Over time, fluency becomes effortless. Vocabulary is no longer memorized, it's functional, alive, and ready to use in conversation, writing, and thought. Now, let's do a 20-minute immersive English immersion session together. This is about thinking, speaking, and imagining entirely in English. Here's how it works. Step 1: observation and narration. 5 minutes. Pick your environment, your room, a park, or a cafe. Observe everything carefully. Describe it in English. Don't just name objects, include details, colors, sounds, textures, and your feelings. For example, I see a white lamp on my desk. Its light is soft and warm. I like how it makes the room feel cozy. There's a notebook beside it, full of ideas I wrote yesterday. I can hear birds chirping outside, and the wind is gently moving the leaves. Keep going for 5 minutes. If you pause, that's okay. Every pause is part of training your brain to process English in real time. Step 2: mental dialogue. As of 5 minutes, pretend you are having a conversation with a friend or colleague. Ask questions and answer them in English. For example, what should I cook tonight? Maybe spaghetti. Do I have tomatoes? Yes. Should I add garlic? Definitely. Oh, I also have fresh basil. That will make it delicious. Switch roles occasionally. Imagine your friend responding and continue the conversation. This builds spontaneous sentence formation and strengthens your English brain. Step 3: storytelling with creativity. 5 minutes. Narrate a real event from your day. Then add a creative twist. For example, today I walked to the park. The sun was shining and birds were singing. I saw a dog chasing a ball. Suddenly, the ball bounced so high, it landed on the roof of a house. I imagined climbing up to get it, laughing all the way. Adding creative twists forces your brain to generate English ideas independently, making vocabulary functional and sentences automatic. Step 4. Shadowing and mimicry of 5 minutes. Choose a short dialogue from a movie, podcast, or YouTube video. Listen carefully and repeat immediately, matching rhythm, intonation, and emotion. Don't focus on perfection, focus on feeling the English flow. Shadowing strengthens real-time processing, helping your mind think in English naturally. Let's add another layer. Pattern practice of 5 minutes. Take 3 sentences from your shadowing exercise. Identify connectors, repeated phrases, and sentence structures. Then create new sentences using the same patterns. For example, original. I went to the store because I needed milk. New. I stayed home because it started raining. Original. She likes reading in the morning. New. Hay enjoys jogging in the evening. This trains your brain to recognize English structures automatically. Vocabulary becomes context-driven, and fluency improves without conscious translation. Now, let's do a reflection and self-assessment exercise. Take a few minutes to think. What sentences flowed naturally today? Which words or patterns felt challenging? Did you notice any improvement compared to yesterday? What can you experiment with tomorrow to push your English thinking further? Reflection reinforces learning and strengthens your mindset, which is just as important as the exercises themselves. Here's a story to inspire you. A student named Nadia had learned hundreds of vocabulary words, but struggled to speak freely. We introduced daily immersive exercises, narration, mental dialogues, storytelling, shadowing, and pattern practice. At first, she hesitated often, but gradually, sentences started forming automatically. Vocabulary became alive in context. She began thinking entirely in English. Within months, Nadia could participate in conversations, narrate stories, and even joke in English, all without translating. She had built a true English brain. Now, let's extend your daily routine to maximize fluency, observation, and narrations. 15 min. Describe your environment or objects in detail in English. Mental dialogue, 5-10 min. Role-play conversations with yourself or imaginary friends. Storytelling of 5-10 min. Narrate daily events and add creative twists. Shadowing, 5-10 min. Repeat lines from movies, podcasts, or YouTube, focusing on rhythm and emotion. Pattern practice, L5 min. Analyze sentences and create new ones using the same structures. Reflection and journaling of 5 men. Note small wins, challenges, and areas to experiment with tomorrow. Consistent daily practice using this routine trains your mind to think in English directly. Vocabulary becomes functional, sentence patterns flow naturally, and your fluency grows steadily. Your brain is no longer memorizing words, it's living, thinking, and communicating in English. Finally, here's a mindset reminder: celebrate progress, not perfection. Every sentence you form, every story you create, every dialogue you imagine is building your English brain. Fluency isn't just a goal, it's the natural result of consistent thinking and practicing in English. So, as we come to the end of this session, remember this: learning English isn't just about memorizing words or repeating phrases. True fluency comes from building an English brain, a mind that thinks, imagines, and reacts directly in English. Every sentence you form, every story you tell, every conversation you simulate is wiring your brain for fluency. Think about all the exercises we explored today, observing and narrating your surroundings, mental dialogues, storytelling, shadowing, and pattern practice. These aren't just activities, they are training sessions for your mind. Each small effort compounds over time, creating automatic pathways that allow your vocabulary to flow naturally into sentences, thoughts, and conversations. Fluency is not a distant dream, it's a process. It grows when your brain starts thinking in English first, not translating from your native language. It grows when you consistently practice, when you experiment, when you make mistakes, and when you reflect on progress. Celebrate every small victory, the 2-minute narration you did without translating, the story you created with imagination, the sentence pattern you applied successfully. These are the building blocks of your English brain. And the more you nurture it, the more effortless your English will become. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep thinking in English. Your vocabulary will no longer just sit in your memory. It will become alive, functional, and ready to flow naturally. Your English brain is growing every single day, and with it, your fluency becomes inevitable. Because when your mind thinks in English, fluency doesn't just happen, it becomes a natural part of who you are.